on episode 427 of the Waves of Tech, our 2018 year in review, and making some predictions for 2019. The Waves of Tech is powered by modernlife.network, modern issues, modern discussions. Steve, welcome in to the second to last episode of 2018. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing very well, but as each year becomes a ending factor of the calendar, I always feel my age and my enthusiasm and everything kind of hit a wall. But hey, when it comes to the podcast, we just keep moving forward.
We keep moving forward, and apologies right up front. I came down with a bit of a allergy and sinus headache nightmare this last week. As you can tell, I'm still a little bit clogged up. I will do my best to mush on, as they say, and we will get through this 2018 review and 2019 prediction show in no time. Well, Steve, let's go ahead and get started. 2018, there was a lot that happened. We did about 50 episodes this year. It's been a lot. It's as close to weekly as we can get based on our schedules and travel and obligations outside of work and podcasting. So what do you say we just dive right into 2018 review?
When you really go back and look at since January, Dave, it's like, how did we fit all of this into a 30, 40-minute show every week? Because it has been booming in 2018.
It has been, and booming for all the right reasons and booming for all the wrong reasons. And this recap isn't going to be super specific. It's just more of like a global outlook of what happened in 2018. But I think at the top of our list, Steve, is data hacks galore. Right, week after week, we heard from, whether it was from social media companies, whether it was financial firms, whether it was department stores. This year, it even trickled into the hotel chains that we've talked of recently. But data hacks, digital security, I think it may have been on our review show last year, but it has its own category in its own right to be talked about again this year. But again, sadly enough, 2018, Steve, was a record year when it comes to digital security, identity theft, and data hacks for consumer information.
Each week, we would start to plan for our show, Dave, and maybe not at the larger levels, but I could find every week some kind of infiltration, some kind of hack, some kind of disturbance with the cyber world. I think what we need to understand when it comes to the protections of us, it's not always about the big corporation. It may not even be in the middle tier. It's a conglomeration of everything, big, middle, small, personal. All those things add up to potentials of cybercrime, and on the other side of the fence, cyber protection. We had pretty much a lot of horrific stories throughout 2018 when it came to cyber matters. I want to point out to everybody a very interesting website that's called cyberreadinessinstitute.org. And really what it's about is empowering small and medium-sized organizations by providing free practical tools to improve cyber readiness. There's a lot of things from business we can apply within our personal lives, and actually kind of vice versa. And I think it should be a goal based on what we've covered over the last couple of years when it comes to cybercrime, is that there are things we can do. And collectively, we have to do it. If we do it one at a time, it just doesn't eat away at the problem. We need to join forces, all get on board, and hammer this out and get it taken care of.
Yeah, I think 2018 served as another reminder to, I think, ourselves, those that, at the professional level, both in the IT and just at the general business commercial level, that data security is not something that we need to be taken lightly. We all need to use password managers. We need to have two-factor authentication implemented and being used by a lot of our users. I think there's still, Steve, a lot of education. You can speak to it on your side as far as just the general end user at work, that practicing, as I've always called, safe surfing, trying to recognize what is this phishing scheme and what emails not to click on and what websites not to visit. And on at least our podcast, Steve, and as we prep for the show week in, week out, it's a weekly reminder of how important it is. And we can't stress it enough year after year. And unfortunately, when we do our review shows and our predictions, data hacks is always at the top of the list because we haven't really fully grasped the problem at hand. And yes, we have amazing digital cybersecurity that are working out there, and there's a lot of great applications and product lines to help us, and there's some brilliant minds out there trying to do their best. But there's always the other side of the coin of those that are trying to wreak havoc cause a lot of issues and concerns and problems for just the end user to the business professional, IT professional, and commercial firm. But it's one of those things where we just year after year, we have to be diligent. And this year was no different.
As we go through our lives every day, it's tough to maintain a vigilance, to sit on the edge of your seat in preparation. I get it, and especially with our mobile devices. Kind of related to this, but kind of not, and that is over the weekend while I was working, I was also surfing around for some new trucks. Although they are way out of my budget anymore. One of the interesting facts was that I was doing it on my computer, and then this morning, my wife sent me some photographs from her Facebook page where some of the things that I was surfing and looking at were on her Facebook page. It's not really a crack or a hack or, that kind of thing, but there are things that are attached to our mediums and the things that we do collectively that gather and impact other things that we gotta be smart about. This kind of put me in a place where, hey, what if I was shopping for a Christmas present for her, and then it was showing up as we had, that I had looked at this stuff, and certainly it's all based on Pixel, and we're on the same network, so it picked it up and those kind of things. But it shows how easy the sensitivity is to pick up that kind of information and distort it.
Yeah, sensitivity is a very big thing. I think that's something we'll continue to talk about. And I think it's a big talking point as you come into privacy concerns and legislation that may be coming here with the United States. Well, Steve, let's move on into some of the big business acquisitions that happened in 2018. The big one that comes to mind for me is when Walt Disney Company announced early last year that it was going to acquire the major assets of their rival, which was 21st Century Fox. It was going to be this mega merger that really aimed to really sort of reset the balance of the industry. I think there was a lot of concern with the mobile market and what was going on in Silicon Valley with this big push with a variety of social media apps, with the growth of Netflix and the growth of a lot of these different streaming services, throwing Hulu, Amazon Prime. And I think Disney's big push there was to, okay, let's control the box office. Let's control a lot of the media on cable subscription packages. Let's do some spin-offs where now that we own the likes of the X-Men series, the Star Wars, a lot of the superhero, we own the Simpsons, we own a lot of variety of cable packages like that. Now they can start to spin off and create their own channels and collect data and user base from a lot of these different industries and kind of pile it on. And so, Steve, I think for me, that was the biggest one that really sent shockwaves, I think, through mostly the entertainment. I think there is still a big battle between traditional entertainment and what's going on in 2018, here to come 2019, with a big wave of mobile. And we know that, for example, AT&T and HBO are now essentially the same company, and you see that being pushed to mobile. You see T-Mobile that is now offering free Netflix packages as part of their subscription. And there's just been a lot of shuffling within the entertainment business. I know going on to another business acquisition was when Verizon picked up all of Yahoo and AOL's old companies. And of course, recent news that Verizon has essentially come out and said that was actually a really bad business decision that we've made and wasn't quite as profitable, I think they thought, from the advertising revenues side of the equation. But that was the other big one that we talked about for a while with Verizon and the future company Oath that it is now. But those were some of the bigger business acquisitions, and most of them surrounded some sort of ad revenue or some sort of entertainment package, which is something we haven't seen over the last number of years.
When it comes to the acquisitions, mergers, hostile takeovers, whatever your definitions are of some of these, there was a lot of them in 2018, I have to admit. To include T-Mobile and Sprint's another one, Dave, and they're huge. And what was the common thread between all of them? It was assets. It was getting to specific types of medium that can be held and distributed across different types of platforms so that they have a stranglehold of content, whether we're talking internet generic, whether we're talking on your phone, whether we're talking about some kind of device in your home, that the real bottom line of what they're all going after is content. they can get it quicker and cheaper by just buying it, by absorbing somebody else that has already done the legwork. And that's what we saw.
Yeah, exactly. And it's something that I think we'll get to with our 2019 predictions, where a lot of that content, that video, which is so king right now, it's driving everything. It's driving ad revenue. It's driving eyeballs. And I think we'll get a little bit more into that in the 2009 predictions section. One thing I did want to bring up, Steve, is the ups and downs of cryptocurrency and Bitcoin. I know you and I don't follow, per se, the cryptocurrency industry or business per se that much. We don't really talk about it. A few times we talked about initial coin offerings, which is sort of a dichotomy to the initial public offerings, where the ICOs are offering more of a cryptocurrency as a buy-in package, for a publicly traded company. But you saw Bitcoin range all the way from $16,000, and I know it took a big drop, 40 to 60% decline here of recently. But Steve, the ups and downs of the cryptocurrency business is really showing its true colors, as far as when you have an unregulated currency in a relatively new marketplace, that it's going to be susceptible. There's no real quite stability within there. And I did actually hear a number of podcasts about Bitcoins and cryptocurrency, mostly around the susceptibility of them, but all relating back to the whole idea of blockchain technology is here to stay and last for a number of years. But what it's being used around currently is really fluctuating and really making a lot of people, once, a lot of money, but also really concerned on the back end as well.
Cryptocurrency has me scared, and that's why I've never been involved with it. Although there is a utility behind cryptocurrencies, as you mentioned, Dave, you're right on the money. When a valuation or a stable currency cannot be maintained without regulation, and it's just kind of almost fly by night, to tell you the truth. Thus, you're seeing these rise and falls in the valuation of cryptocurrency. I'm not saying it's a right or wrong thing, but I think that for those that are deeply involved with it are always going to be, and it becomes an issue of haves and has-nots.
Yeah, it definitely has its place in technology. It has a place within the financial marketplace. It's just, at what point do we consider it to be a viable currency? Currency is just whatever value people put on a product or an item or something like that. And this very unregulated system really leaves a lot of questions. But also, Steve, I think both you and I can agree that there's a lot of promise there. Whether the federal government here in the United States or even different international governing bodies decide to start to regulate this or take it seriously, we're going to have to see. I mean, we've seen Bitcoin ATMs essentially, pop up in the likes of Columbus, Ohio and Nashville, Tennessee. And you're just seeing this big trend towards, okay, this is a transactional product that works for a lot of people, but we'll have to see, obviously, after a few more years of it developing and growing and people, grasp onto it, where it goes. Steve, I think one of the biggest things in 2018 that hit the books was Equifax. And this debacle, that's probably the nicest term we could probably put it, this disaster, really took, I think, a lot of us within the tech industry by surprise. Equifax was warned several times by governing agencies that they had noticed a vulnerability in their firewall. They were noticing vulnerabilities within their system. And guess what the Equifax executives decided to do? Continue to ignore the advice in the letters and the concerns that different regulatory agencies were sending them. And essentially ended up with 500 million plus people having not only, Steve, just personal information, but we're talking credit scores, credit card numbers, social security, dates of birth, so many things that we actually rely on this company of Equifax to keep safe. And not only was their PR a complete disaster, their response and their willingness to be transparent with those that have lost information or that had it stolen was, again, a complete debacle. And we've even seen Equifax CEO that was canned and retired. And we learned a lot about them by them having to answer at U.S. Congress. It was just a complete disaster, Steve. And that's one of the things that absolutely sticks in my mind about 2018, not on the good side of technology, but on the very negative, bad side of it.
2018, nothing puts a fire under my chair more than the Equifax story. And it's not just a singular story. There are many offshoots of what happened, and this lasted for a very, very long time, if in fact it's even put to bed yet. The Equifax really, really upsets me. Why they are still in business is a mystery to me, a absolute mystery. Credit score information and things about your personal finances. This is some of the most sensitive stuff that you could ever imagine. And they were blatantly just disregarding anything for years about it. And then when it finally did take fire and come out, what do all the top executives do? They retire. They get their golden parachutes, get their multi-millions of dollars, and wash their hands. It was pathetic. And our laws in protection of us and what to do about them were not adequate. I think when we did one of the episodes about this, I actually read the letter that I got from Equifax because I was one. And it was kind of like, sorry, you have to go do your due diligence now. We're done. I was mad because of your delinquents, I'm going to suffer and I have to go correct all this stuff now. They come up with a website where you can go and check and see if your name is on the dark web. Whoopee, big deal. Equifax just infuriates me, Dave.
Oh, absolutely. I remember you read that letter and it was like, oh, we messed up. Here's what you need to do to fix it. Not, this is what we as Equifax is going to do. I remember one of the big shocking things was that they were going to give you 1 year of service protection. And then after that free 1 year, you were going to have to pay for it to have your credit score monitored. And it's like, for every one of those individuals that had their information, that should have been a complimentary. It could have been, make it 5 years. That's good with me. Make it 10 years, but not put in there, we're going to give you 12 months of protection. All of a sudden, then you're on the hook for the rest of it. But Steve, yeah, I want to move on after this because I feel like we're going to get heated if we keep talking about Equifax. But it was a blatant disregard and just their disregard for humanity when it came to this. It was a utter disaster, debacle, such a disgraceful company. And how, as you said, how they are still in business is just beyond me.
Just real quick, Dave, it is a total 360 of the one you just got received from the hotel business.
Absolutely, yeah. Wherein we talked about the Starwood and some of the, I think it was the Hilton or Marriott. And I got this really great detailed email from Hilton and Starwood that said, this is exactly what happened. They went through all the information detail by detail. Here's what we have done. This is what just you as a user need to look out for. And here's a bunch of like resources, information, and links about a variety of things. And I was so pleased and comfortable. Yes, it was a month after the hack had been announced, but we did get some information. I don't expect these companies to come out and have answers for us within the first 2 hours. But I received the email. I appreciate it. It gave me a really good grasp on what was going on. And for that, I'm very thankful. Unlike Equifax, which sent snail mail essentially to everybody. And if you go to Equifax, you got to use your email to sign up. So I don't know why it took them so long to get their information out. Probably just trying to cover their you-know-whats. Well, Steve, let's move on to augmented reality. We didn't talk about it too much in 2018, but augmented reality did grow along with the Pokemon Go sensation. There's a lot more augmented reality applications that you can use on social media, such as Snapchat and Instagram. I don't really have much more to offer than that, Steve, but AR is one of those things that developers are using a lot more now. Gamers are using it, both from the developmental side and from the users. But AR will continue to grow in prominence, and you're going to start seeing it a little bit more incorporated in some home entertainment, just like you're starting to see it within the mobile space. But it continues to grow in 2018, specifically on mobile and social media.
Pokemon, no. That's what I say, Dave. You're right. AR is becoming more and more predominant, and we've actually seen it in some of Apple's recent keynotes when part of their framework also includes AR technologies.
Absolutely, with ARKit and what they're doing there. It's a big talking point, and it's going to continue to grow. But 2018, I think, was pretty close to a banner year, I think, for AR, and I think it's really paying off for them. Well, Steve, one point I did want to make this year is it seemed like this was, what do we call this, year of the smart home? This is where everything, I think, in my opinion, we finally learned that anything and everything you have in your household can be Wi-Fi enabled, from your coffee pot to your tea kettle. You can have a Wi-Fi enabled fridge along with stove. You can have a Wi-Fi enabled barbecue along with your washer and dryer. You can have a Wi-Fi enabled smart home device. And now you have anything, Steve, you can think that you can utilize an app through your phone or speak to as part of a smart speaker system is the new 2018. And I think I don't think it's unfair to call it the year of the smart home, because now, as you said, we have thermostats, we have ADT systems that are completely Wi-Fi enabled. It's a pretty incredible feat, and that Internet of Things, which everybody talks about year after year, is truly a big movement. There are billions and billions of these Internet of Things devices that are making up our homes in 2018.
You are so right. And I am one of the owners of all that kind of crap, thermostats and my security systems, and it goes on and on. To include, I even have some Wi-Fi enabled things within my RV.
Exactly.
So even mobile, we can do some of these cool things. And I think it's great. Probably the one I love the most is my Wi-Fi thermostat. I mean, we're gone, we're on a trip or whatever. We can adjust temperatures, if the animals are home or not. If I'm away and my wife is here, I can freak her out and instead of the heater, set it down to 20 degrees and watch her call me and freak out what's going on. And some fun things like that can happen too. There's energy conservation behind it. It eliminates a lot of craps, and it's very convenient. I'm really into it. I love it.
Yeah, I think convenience is one of the big selling points of the smart home movement and smart home technology. And when you get everything, as I said, you can have, smart home speakers, you have smart home lights and lighting systems in your house now, where you don't even have to get up to turn lights off with voice activation. And with Siri and some of the other technologies, you can do a lot with voice activation and smart home integration. The one thing I will say that I think needs to improve off of that after Banner 2018 is that integration portion. You have a lot of different devices that are working on very different platforms and technologies, and that's going to happen when you get a lot of interest and a lot of manufacturers. But it would be a really nice way of actually learning, okay, a Nest uses what technology? What does this device or this lighting system, how does this integrate with my existing, smart home infrastructure? And I think that's something that lacks, that really needs to be improved in the future. But the year of the smart home, I don't think that's an understatement. Well, Steve, space travel, we love, of course, we love space here on the Waves of Tech. And this year, again, a great year. We saw Tesla Rocket Man get launched into outer space. We had Mars Insight that landed onto Mars to do some, not atmospheric, but more in-ground, below-surface investigations to serve us well in the future. And of course, Spaceship Two recently launched here. We also saw Strato launch. That was part of Paul Allen's venture out here in the Mojave Desert. That took off as an airplane that can make it into orbit. But Steve, space travel, man, year after year continues to impress us. And these minds behind what's happening is really pushing the envelope for space and science at this point.
This is really cool stuff. We've talked a lot about it because I think when we start pushing the boundaries of technology and technologies, space is kind of where my mind goes. And where Insight landed on Mars not too long ago, it was just a phenomenal feat in how they went about this. Weekend before last, there was to be a Delta IV rocket launch out of Vandenberg Air Force Base. And so I was set up outside with my telescope and my live view and all kinds of things, waiting for it to blast. When 7 seconds to go, it aborted. But they're going to try it again tomorrow, Tuesday, December 18th. I'm hoping it's a little earlier in the evening, so I'm hoping I can see it. But those kinds of things are just incredibly important to our future. When we talk about space and technologies, how exciting can it really be and where we can go? And so my test question to everybody is, we have day and night here on the Earth from our glorious star, the sun. But in space, why is it always dark? There is not day and night. Send me your answers.
Good question.
Do you ever think about it?
I do. And
I know the answer.
We can save the answer, let's say, for episode 428. We'll start the show off with that. But if you have any ideas, definitely email us or hit us up on Twitter at the Waves of Tech. That'd be great to hear your either thoughts, opinions, or what you know is the answer to be true. Well, Steve, you talked about with space travel, about looking in the future. Let's talk about Paul Allen passing, and he is very important to our past of technology, but also really established future goals in the industry. And just a real quick recap, Paul Allen, as we know, passed away October 15, 2018. He was a business magnate, investor. He's actually a software engineer. He was big. It was a big humanitarian. He worked in the philanthropy business for a very long number of years. And of course, alongside Bill Gates, he co-founded Microsoft back in 1975 and really helped spark the microcomputer PC revolution. And of course, grew that to become the largest PC software company as we know today. We did talk about earlier with Stratolaunch, and he was essentially, the co-founder of that company. He's also co-founder of Mojave Aerospace Ventures. He was part owner of a number of both Seattle and Portland sports franchises. And Steve he leaves such a lasting legacy here with the United States, and what him and Bill Gates created back in 1975 will have everlasting impacts within the industry, both technologically and humanitarian-wise.
Here's why it's very important that we remember these people and what they've done. And that is, during this time frame, primarily the late 80s, early 90s, was a time frame where these individuals came together and put their minds together that built the future. I'm talking about the Gates and the Allens and the Jobs, and we could go on down the list. And within this era, it's getting to that point in time where these people are getting, I'm not going to say elderly, but up in years, okay? It's important that we remember the contributions of where we started to where we are now. It's very, very, very important. You can't talk about the history of airplanes and not talk about the Wright brothers. And it's that kind of thing that we really, truly, as we continue to press down the road in the next century or whatever the case may be, the pioneers of what we have today.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's well said, Steve. And I think something that we're going to be pioneering more in the future, but we have to look at in 2018 is a really, really strong year with self-driving cars. And there has been a number of successes, along with, of course, a number of failures, which is very similar to most industries, whether it be social media, whether it be video production, streaming services, anything. But Uber had some generally, I would say, a failure of a year, Steve. They had 2 accidents, both resulting in death. More recent one, I believe, in the Phoenix area, that Uber quickly settled about, I think, 3 days outside of court. They had a financial payment to the family of that victim. But you're seeing a lot more focus being put on self-cars, not just from Uber, but you're seeing a lot of entrepreneurial startup companies. You see Ford and GM and Toyota moving towards some sort of self-automation when it comes to the driving of vehicles. Now, I think where the failure came in, Steve, was a lot of these these autonomous vehicles still not being able to recognize the hazards in front of them or around them as well as people can. There's always been this mindset of, okay, people are terrible drivers, but guess what? We're seeing more and more accidents with these self-driving cars per se in comparison to just the general population. But I think the success lies, Steve, where you're having a lot more innovation, you're having a lot more money funneled through R&D into these self-driving cars, into the development, into this artificial intelligence learning, that I don't think self-driving cars are going to be here anytime soon. I know there's a lot of people that say 2019, we're going to see self-automated vehicles, self-driving cars on the roads, perhaps in very, very isolated markets like Phoenix. Don't see it coming anywhere here within California. I don't even see it anywhere, say even Austin or New York or Atlanta or North Carolina, any of those places. But self-driving cars, I think, really hit the target in 2019 and has a lot of work to do. But still, it's worth bringing up that 2018 was a big year for that.
I'm not saying that we can't test some of this stuff, but self-driving cars is premature. We're not there. The technology is not there, and I think more importantly, we are not there as a race. Our mental status when it comes to something doing itself autonomous, we just can't handle it yet. You look at some of the Tesla things that have gone on and, on down the road, and as a people, as a country, as a community, and as technologists, Dave, I just don't think we're there yet, and it's going to be sometime much further down the stream, as like when the year 2000 came and I woke up January 1st of that year and wondered why there was no flying cars.
Exactly.
It's just going to take a while.
Yeah, it's going to take a little bit of time, and, I love the technology. I love where it's going. I'm glad they're not, I'm going to use the pun, pumping the brakes on pushing forward, but it needs to be 100% before people, companies, and city streets actually permit regulate, allow these things onto the roads. Because right now, Steve, there's some people in the business, and bless their souls, they think it's going to take over the entire automotive industry. It's going to be taking over the trucking industry. Next thing you know, there's going to be self-driving, ships that are going from the Long Beach harbor to China. It's like, okay, slow down. I understand you're excited. It's going to be something that potentially could be game-changing in some industries, but I think self-driving cars, like you, I'm very skeptical. But 2018 was a big year. A lot of work and a lot of science and a lot of background went into it, but it doesn't mean it's here for the long haul. One final thing, Steve, then we'll jump into 2019 predictions, is in 2018, we know that artificial intelligence, learning machines, there's a lot going on in the space, and AI is not new. It's been around for a number of years. Every big company has used it, from Google to Facebook to Amazon. You see artificial intelligence learning going on with IBM. You see it going on in warehouses. Essentially, it's everywhere. But the one thing I wanted to bring up in 2018 is, Steve, there was a lot more companies this year that were publicly promoting and marketing themselves as AI firms. You saw it a lot on TV. You saw it on a lot of advertising via smartphone apps. But I think that is the one thing that really stood out to me with AI this year, is that companies were being more prominent about demonstrating themselves as a company that invests and takes AI seriously. And I think that was just to get a little bit more market share and a little bit more curiosity and interest from a lot of the bigger corporations and those in the professional working environment, the enterprise environment. So yeah, AI, learning machines, it's always going to be here, but I thought this was a very unique year in exactly how people really saw and envisioned AI being used.
I think it's an important thing to talk about AI, because for a number of years, we've seen it coming down the road. And you're right, 2018, it really hit a plateau, but then the rise started again, climbing to the next plateau. And if there's anything that's really going to change how things are accomplished, how we do things, and kind of change our world, I think it's going to be AI.
Yeah, absolutely. I think AI is a big thing, both in healthcare and finance, and you can look at banking, you can look at insurance, from how we use our devices to how we use our phones. AI is just here to stay, and it's a big benefit. And yes, it's going to replace some jobs, but also you have some people that are developing the technology. AI is not creating itself. There are people behind the scenes making artificial intelligence work, and they're being rewarded heavily for it. Well, Steve, let's dive into 2019 predictions. I will start off with probably not much of a shocker in my opinion, but if somebody else has a different say, go ahead and let us know by heading over to modernlife.network and getting in contact with us. I think with everything we've talked about over the last 6 months, with privacy legislation, everything that happened over in the UK and the European Union with GDPR, I'm making the prediction, Steve, that no changes here in the United States related to privacy legislation and regulation are coming. We know that Google, Facebook, Twitter, a wide variety of large companies have taken, front and center for the Senate hearings and these committees. And I don't think the U.S. government and a lot of these companies are honestly that serious about putting any sort of legislative framework around data privacy for citizens, access to the data that these companies are essentially taking from the users and consumers of their products. So that may not be a bold prediction, Steve, but there has been hints of this foundation being laid, but I don't think we're going to see any benchmark or any, foundational legislation made in 2019.
You are correct. There will be no government intervention when it comes to online privacy. And when it comes to social media giants, they're still going to do whatever they want to dig into your pocket of history, pocket of desires, and manipulate it how they think is best for their bottom dollar. And so it's a judgment call you're going to have to make. Is it your privacy, or is it the entertainment or value of social media?
Yeah, I think along with those lines, you just triggered something, Steve, for me, is location services. We talked about it the last couple of weeks, and that ties directly into what you talked about with these companies essentially just peeling back every layer of how you use your phone. And again, like you said, you have to be diligent and you have to be considerate of which apps you're allowing to use and collect certain things. And when we hit that, I agree. I know it's difficult, but sometimes, maybe you don't use that app, or perhaps you don't keep location services on, 24/7. So I think that's a big thing in 2019. We're not going to see anything. And I'm glad I got Steve on my side, because if I got Steve on my side, maybe I'm onto something. So, Steve, what do you think is maybe the next big game changer in technology in 2019? I was struggling, honestly, to come up with one thing that was going to be a game changer, and I have something, but it's probably not what you're thinking.
Well, it's probably not, because let me tell you what comes to my mind. 2019, I don't think there is going to be a thundering game changer of technology. I think what we're going to find in 2019 is more definition, more refinement, more consideration of our technologies and how we interact and use those versus any major game changes.
Yeah, I think everyone in their 2019 predictions is always trying to come up with what's the next big thing. Is it changes in the way we use AI, or is it a new industry like Bitcoin that's going to come and surface? And the only thing I can think of, Steve, is because it's in my head with what's going on with video, right? Video is king right now, and everybody wants a piece of that. The one that comes to mind, and I've been saying this at least with conversations between my wife and I think Netflix is in for a big 2019. And what I mean by that is Netflix historically, with the exception of perhaps the last 2 or 3 years, has always been a company that has purchased entertainment, right? They purchase stuff from TV networks, they buy them from Fox and all the big screen companies. And I think now that Netflix has really transitioned to being their own production company, I think Netflix's next big move in 2019 is actually going to be making it in movie theaters. I think Netflix has been up for a variety of awards associated with TV programming, but they can't get into that beloved Oscars category, which is only allowed for movies. And I think that's one of their next big things. They're going to find their way, it's probably going to be late 2019, into getting into movie theaters and somehow getting on that Oscar-nominated platform. Because I think still the movies, whereas TV programming, this on-demand, this original programming, this original content is a big move. I think you have to make a big splash in the movie theaters if you really want to really change that game. So that's my big 2019 prediction. I think that's going to be a big game changer. It's interconnected with technology. So I think that's where we're going with it.
That's a very interesting prediction, and I had never thought of it as to where Netflix might be going next in relationship to content. And that's a pretty good prediction. I'll tell you, when it comes to what you said, quote, video.
Exactly. Keep saying it.
I'm in a lot of instances, I'm really getting sick of it.
Oversaturation.
Facebook, anytime somebody goes live, notification, so-and-so's live. Anytime I go to a website and there is a video of something of interest that I want to indulge in, oops, there's 3 minutes of commercial prior to. And for me, it's a big turnoff. I don't have time for that. I don't care about that. I'm going after specific content that should be represented in a format, a presentation that is comfortable. And I'm finding, at least me personally, that that's not really true anymore, Dave. They have to pre and post roll it with a bunch of crap.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily stuff that you like or that you want to be... Like, I could deal with a 30-second commercial on a sporting event that I'm interested in, or a 30-second, mid-roll on, I don't know, some game that I'm playing or something that's connected to it. Those aren't the best examples, but there's certain things we can deal with, and I think that's not going to change in 2019. We can say that with 100% confidence. But I know what you're saying. So speaking of video, I think one of the big things, and I know you're well aware of this, with 5G connectivity that's going on, and we know that it's been test piloted in, I think, 5 or 11 different cities here in the United States. But what do you think about 5G connectivity? You think it's going to be gaining a lot of edge in the industry and essentially perhaps being a game changer for 2019?
I don't, and I'll tell you why.
Ooh, okay.
I don't, because right now, at least within my world, 4G LTE is fine. I don't have issues with it. Now, if I'm going to be streaming something that's monstrous in size, perhaps, but I think the majority of the benefit of 5G is not necessarily at the user end. It's a back-end issue, which certainly has flavorability to the end user, but I think it's more advantage to the back end people when it comes to pushing content. I'm no expert in it. Maybe we need to get Andy Kosowski on here. I don't think it changes my life. And, it'll probably be 20 years before I get it where I live anyway. But I don't think it has a big impact to my daily operations.
I think you hit it on something important there, Steve. I think 5G will continue to spread. Is it going to gain a really large competitive edge in the industry? Probably not, because of that, as you mentioned, you hinted at, that infrastructure limitation, right? Because it's not going to be readily available to everybody. It's going to be very highly sought after by a number of corporate level entities and professional industries before it really gets trickled down to us, the general end user. Yeah, you're going to have some markets, i.e. the 5 to 10 that are already existing here in the United States. But I think it's going to be rolled out slowly, and I'm going to take your advice on this one, and maybe pump my brakes a little bit on this, because I really thought 5G would have a really, really positive 2019, and positive is probably the right word to use, but maybe I'm overinflating how well 5G is going to be, one, embraced, how it's going to integrate with the infrastructure, and how well telecom companies are going to be able to, as you said, on the back end, provide that and push that out to everybody. So yeah, I mean, maybe just look for 5G to make some waves in 2000.
Yeah, I can accept that. I look back when we went from 3 to 4G. To me, that was a huge jump. And it's more on a premise of we were really, really, really bottlenecked on 3G, as you remember.
That's true.
And 4G really opened up that space. But I don't see 5 really doing kind of that same thing, at least not now. And even when we went to 4G, it was a number of years before I could even get it.
Yeah, maybe I got caught up, I think, in the whole let's ramp up and let's get going right away. Maybe I got caught up in the hubbub about what's going on in 5G, and maybe I need to step back a little bit. Maybe it's just best for some markets to absorb it and take care of it right now, and then we can look at that in the future. So maybe 2019 review, we'll be talking about some of the things 5G changed.
Well, I have never been wrong, Dave, in my entire life about anything, but I could be about this.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, after 426 recorded episodes of The Ways of Tech, I've never heard you say anything wrong. So
Never. Except pronouncing hockey names.
Hockey names or individuals' names. That's always seems to be a crux in the Lee family. Well, Steve, what about cloud computing? As we get close to wrapping up this show, I don't follow cloud computing that much. There's been some talk about how Amazon may be spinning off AWS as its own company. I don't know if that probably makes financial stock sense. I don't know if that changes things in the industry, but aside from like Amazon Web Services, is there anything perhaps in cloud computing in 2019 that you want to share?
Yeah, I think I will, Dave, because regardless of what Amazon does with AWS, because it is the big monster. It's what most Fortune 500 companies use, and people don't understand that is a big revenue for Amazon. And should not be a separate identity. Technology-wise, it doesn't matter. It's going to be a business decision. That's all about profitability and those kinds of things. But aside from AWS, there are many, many alternatives that I have used. I have various customers that use, whether it's simplistic in form of Hyper-Vs, which is Microsoft spin-offs of doing things, through Rackspace, through Azure. We had a discussion not long ago that IBM finally smacked themselves in the head and said, oh my goodness, we got to get involved with this cloud computing. I want to clarify something, Dave, that a lot of people think that the cloud computing is document storage. Oh, that is so far from the truth.
Couldn't be farther from the truth, exactly.
It is a minuscule aspect of it, and I think that's where a lot of people get hung up. In short, cloud computing can be pretty much any kind of computing over the internet. Whether we're talking applications or whatever the case may be, you can spin up certain variances of getting things done, and that is cloud computing. It is not document storage. And from a personal perspective, I can understand that. But cloud computing is honestly a way for organizations to get the computing off of their lap onto somebody else's to drive down cost. And that's the most important thing about cloud computing. And as in 2018, it's certainly going to continue off into a astronomical pace.
Yeah, I totally forgot to mention during our big business acquisitions that actually, yeah, Red Hat was acquired by IBM, and that really positioned IBM to compete more directly with, AWS and Microsoft Azure. It'll be interesting, Steve, to see what sort of market share, if any, they take from them. And perhaps my prediction with cloud computing is we kind of stay at the level playing field that it's at right now. AWS is the big boy in the room, followed by Microsoft, and then you have IBM maybe coming in third, fourth after that. So yeah, but I think understanding cloud computing is a big thing that a lot of people need to realize and maybe investigate if you're not familiar out there. But doesn't sound like anything major happening in cloud computing 2019.
I don't see anything major. I think you may see more services across a spectrum of based on specific utility. But in terms of the companies that provide platforms to do that, I think you're going to see that stay pretty steady.
Yeah, I think that's exactly why the likes of IBM picked up Red Hat. It's just another offering in their suite of professional services, right? And I think you're probably gonna see IBM do some more of that. You're gonna see Microsoft be able to add a little bit more to their arsenal of services they can provide. Steve, one final thought before we end the show here, and it's gonna be no surprise, probably a prediction everybody here in the technology space is gonna make, but I think it's gonna happen, is that Amazon's gonna surpass Apple as the most profitable, well, not profitable, the most valued company here in the United States. Right now, I think they're both at some bazillion trillion dollars. Maybe 800 and shoot, I don't remember what the price tag is right now, but I think Amazon is well on its way. I think it's going to be getting into the pharmaceutical business. It's going to get into the healthcare industry here real fast with its employees, and as profitable and rich and financially solvent as Apple is, I think Amazon is going to be taking that number one crown. And honestly, Steve, I don't see another company coming close to either catching them or trying to compete with them. I think once Amazon surpasses Apple, that's going to stay number 1 and 2 for the foreseeable future.
It is probably the most unbelievable story in technology when it comes to the development of a company during the dot-com bubble era to where it is today is a story that I think a lot of people woke up and go, what happened? How did Amazon all of a sudden just be like this? It's a progression that I think was very skillfully mastered by Jeff Bezos and others, which created this unbelievable empire. But it doesn't happen as much in today's world. But I would say that I would see caution in that they could get broken up eventually, especially as they continue to put their tentacles out in various other things, as in, food shopping and things like that. But yeah, for now, they're the big dog on the hill. And I got one last thing, Dave. Let's also stay cognizant that the technologies that we use and enjoy is that technologies are also used to create other items, other spin-offs. And some of the examples are computers. However, computers have bad things in them for our environment. So we need to make sure that we recycle them appropriately. Technology has been used to create the advent of plastics. Plastics have become an incredible problem in our oceans. And if you go to 4ocean.com, you can learn more about it. And you can also buy a bracelet that has been made some of the plastics recovered from our oceans. So what am I getting at, Dave, is our technology is great, but there's byproduct of it. And we need to be responsible of all the byproducts and do what's responsible to that.
I agree with you wholeheartedly, Steve. Yeah, man. Well, with that said, 2018 was sure a blast to get behind the mic with you, of course. And we covered a lot. There's a lot to go over in 2018. But I think we're also really looking forward to 2019. We'll have to revisit to see if any of our predictions, in fact, came true. I love other podcasts that do the same thing, whether it's based on a sport or technology, and they always come back a year later, Steve, and say, I went like 1 for 12. I couldn't have been farther from the truth, but I think that's the fun of this platform and the fun behind technology is that we can banter week in and week off. We can have plenty of opinions, both right, wrong, or indifferent, about where the industry is going. And it doesn't matter per se where we are in this journey of technology. The course is being charted, and we're just here to ride those waves. Steve, parting words for episode 427.
I like how you summarize that, Dave. And in 2018, we also recorded show 400, which was quite a milestone for you and I in the show. And really appreciate all those that have listened over the years. And also, I'm going to give credit where credit is due. International Podcast Day, which is a presentation that you and I do for 2018, was a huge success, and we're very proud of that too.
That was a really good year, and we look forward to doing more technology and more podcasting in the future, both here domestically in the United States, but also internationally. Well, that's going to wrap it up. We will be back next week for our final 2018 show. The Ways of Tech is powered by modernlife.network. Thanks for tuning in, and don't forget to keep on teching.